Hello, everybody. So, there's always these debates, especially on the internet, about what's the best decade. Probably the two most notorious ones are the '90s and 2000s. So, well, and I think part of what it is that a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people feel like are obviously gonna think that their childhood decade was the best, so to speak, because it's like that's who doesn't, yeah. But the thing is, I'm more of a '90s kid. I'll admit that right now. But like the '90s was my childhood, 2000s was my teenage years. So I miss both of them daily. But honestly, I can't say I like one over the other. I think it's pretty equal. Both decades were great. Had a great. I made two lists here of stuff from from each decade, to do not necessarily a comparison, but just to show that both decades had a great line of these products, if you will. So and there are probably others that I left out. These are ones that I know there are ones that I left out and stuff, but these are just ones that I feel like really kind of highlighted that decade, at least for me, and maybe others, so to speak, which, yeah. But let's start with video games, or game consoles. The 90s had the Sega Genesis, the Game Boy, which I know those technically came out in '89, but they were still, part of the '90s. I mean, Genesis was released in Japan in '89, and then in no, maybe it was '88. Yeah, it was '88 in Japan and '89 in North America. My mistake. And then Super Nintendo, of course, my favorite console of all time. PS1, my second favorite console of all time. There was the Saturn and the Nintendo 64. Now, move over to the 2000s. There was the PS2, which, again, released in '99, but that was whatever. It was still a big part of the 2000s. It was the tail end of the '99, so, the holiday season or whatever. So, the GameCube, Game Boy Advance, my favorite handheld of all time, the original Xbox, PSP, Nintendo DS, PS3, and Wii and Xbox 360, which those three right there came out in the mid-2000s, and they ran for quite a few years, into the that was a long console generation. I think it was mainly because of the economic crash, so to speak. Now let's talk about music. So, for the '90s, that was the grunge era, basically. And when it comes to these are bands that I think kind of really stood out. Well, actually, before I get into the bands, there was also the way we listened to music back then, which was basically Walkmans. Those little portable CD player things, we would call them Walkmans. But then artists and bands that I think really stood out during that era were MC Hammer, Mariah Carey, The Offspring, my favorite band of all time, Blink-182, Rob Zombie, Celine Dion, and of course, Nirvana. And then, for the 2000s music, I feel like that was kind of the pop rock era. Seemed to be a very popular genre during that decade. And listen to music, there was iPods. I actually still use one, to be honest with you. Personally, I'm not too crazy about the idea of streaming music. That's just me. There was, and of course, not just iPods, but also MP3 players in general. And then there was, remember, I think these came out in 2000. Remember Hit Clips? Those little it was one song, a little chip thing that you put in a little player or whatever. And then for bands that I feel or artists that really stood out that decade, they were Avril Lavigne, Papa Roach, Sum 41, Paramore, and Andrew WK. Now let's move on to toys, which, of course, when you think about some of them are when you think about things that are based off of franchises, you know, there's always, like, pretty much any popular franchise is going to have a toy line based off of it. So, like, Star Wars, Ninja Turtles, and stuff like that. Those, Batman as one that's not necessarily in there, so to speak. But, well, now I'm kind of contradicting myself. Mighty Max, because that was part of a TV show. I mean, it was like, the show was made to push the toy line, but whatever. Skip It, Pogs, Gigapets, Z-Bots and War Planets, which a lot of people I feel like don't remember, but those were some really cool toy lines. Dog Boy, remember that thing? Gak, Polly Pocket, Furby, Beanie Babies. I think these were called Littlest Pet Shop, not the ones that we've seen like in recent years, but it was something that because I'm not in for these toy lines. For both decades, I'm including like boy and girl toys because who knows? If you're a boy, man, or a woman watching this, or whatever the case may be, or some toys were just like targeted toward everyone, no real gender or anything. So, but that's what this one was obviously a girl toy, and it was. I think it was called. It was in the '90s. I think it was called like Littlest Pet Shop, and that's what it was. It was like little animals that came with like a little set that like there was like a cat, like a lizard, penguins, things like that. And it was pretty much the same concept that we've seen like in recent years. But I remember it also was in the '90s. And my sister had a ton of them. That's why I brought that up. Then there was ones which were part of like the '80s but ran into the '90s. Such as Ninja Turtles and Micro Machines. And for the 2000s toys, there was Bratz dolls, Beyblade, Lego Bionicle, Poochie, and Meowchi. I think I had the cat one. Petty Spaghetti, Zuzu Pets, Razor Scooters. I remember I had one of those. Fistful of Power, which another one I feel like a lot of people don't remember, but that was pretty cool. Like I had a bunch of those. Actually, I still have quite a few of those. And of course, now we're going to move on to the movies. So first, 90s obviously. That's Jurassic Park, Jumanji, Men in Black, Mrs. Doubtfire, Titanic, Starship Troopers, Toy Story, Lion King, Pulp Fiction, the TMNT movies, the Ace Ventura movies, the Wayne's World movies, the Austin Powers movies, aside from the third one, which wasn't really, well, it was alright. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Sorry, I had to kind of... The Fifth Element. Home Alone movies. Nutty Professor. Nightmare Before Christmas. And The Matrix, which was like at the tail end of the 90s, so to speak. Then for the 2000s, there was Castaway, the Star Wars prequels, with the exception of the first one. The second Matrix movie, the second and third Matrix movies, the Incredibles, Final Destination movies, the Saw movies, the Shrek movies, Alien vs. Predator, Finding Nemo, Men in Black 2, which I think Men in Black, did I mention Men in Black for the 90s? Yeah, because that was another one in there. I'm pretty sure I did. Anyway, Super Troopers, District 9, The Dark Knight, the Spider-Man and X-Men movies, which, whether you're a fan of those or not, they were still a big part of the 2000s. Like, I've never been a huge Spider-Man fan, and those X-Men movies were okay. Like, I thought they were alright. Like, they had their moments, but they weren't, like, anyways, also, there was the Lord of the Rings movies, Juno, Holes, the Scary Movie series, Bruce Almighty, and Napoleon Dynamite. And, of course, lastly, we have TV shows. So, for the 90s, there was Seinfeld, Kenan and Kel, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the variety of Sonic shows, there was Sonic the Hedgehog, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and Sonic Underground. Mega Man cartoon series, Kablam, Rocko's Modern Life, The Adventures of Pete and Pete, Xena and Hercules, Salute Your Shorts, Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. Remember that show? That was... Oh, my whole family used to watch that show. I love that show. I still watch it from time to time. It's, you know... SWAT Cats, Mighty Max, Beast Wars, X-Files, another one that my family really enjoyed, Bobby's World, X-Men, the animated one, Batman the Animated Series, Boy Meets World, Quack Pack, Samurai Pizza Cats, Tiny Toon Adventures, one of my favorite cartoons of all time, Goosebumps, Tales from the Crypt, and Cowboy Bebop. Now from the 2000s, we have The Adventures of Billy and Mandy, or Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Codename Kids Next Door, Static Shock, The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, the 2003 TMNT series, Naruto, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Avatar The Last Airbender, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Teen Titans, Metabots, Sonic X, Totally Spies, Justice League, The Batman, H2O Just Add Water, Drake and Josh, iCarly, Degrassi, Spunk, which a lot of people don't remember. Statics. Wait, did I write that twice? So I did. My Life as a Teenage Robot, Invader Sim, X-Men Evolution, which some people liked that show, some people hated. I thought it was a cool take on the franchise. Instant Star, Radio Free Roscoe, and Jackie Chan Adventures. And of course, 2000s also had some pretty cool networks. There was G4, the video game network, and The N, which was basically the old school version of Teen Nick. And there was a lot of really good shows on there, like original programs and stuff. Like those were Instant Star and Degrassi and what was the other one I mentioned? Radio Free Roscoe. And there are others too, but that was, God, I remember that was like during that network was a big part of my teenage years. I used to watch that all the time when I was in high school. And of course you might be thinking like, wait a minute, you left out a whole bunch of other shows. Well, that's the thing. These are ones that I feel like are more neutral. Like they're kind of both like 90s and 2000 shows. Like for example, there are shows that came out in 98 or 99 and ran into the 2000s. So that's why I feel like they're kind of neutral. Like they're both 90s and 2000 shows. Those are Pokemon, Digimon, SpongeBob, Family Guy, Futurama, Batman Beyond, Cat Dog, and Fairly Odd Parents, which you might be like, wait, what? Because Fairly Odd Parents originally was part of Oh Yeah Cartoons, which was a series on Nickelodeon that came out in 98, and it had like a bunch of different shorts on it and stuff, like, basically these like 6-7 minute cartoon stuff, and that's actually where Fairly Odd Parents came from. Same with Chalk Zone. I think My Life as a Teenage Robot did too, but that was only like one episode or something. There might be others too, but those are just the ones that I'm familiar with. And another series that came out in 97 and it is still going on to this day was South Park. So like I said, that's like a 90s, 2000 show, hell, even a 2010 show, and now it's a 2020s show. Then shows that came out in 96 were Arthur and Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold, somewhere in like the early I think it was around 2004, it kind of slowly started to fizzle out. Maybe even before that. Arthur is still going to this day, even though it's now coming to a close. And then shows that came out in the early 90s were Rugrats, which, like I said, that one ended like in the early 2000s. There was the spin-offs, and now there's the reboot. And Power Rangers, which, well, that version of it, because, originally it was a show in Japan that they kind of redubbed and everything, it was an ongoing show from Japan that they redubbed, like, later seasons and stuff, and then, but that version that we're familiar with here in North America came out in the early 90s, and it's still going to this day, like all the different variations of it and stuff, like. And finally, a show that, well, came out like the tail end of the 80s, it was 89, and then that's The Simpsons. So that's like an ongoing show. It was big in the 90s, big in the 2000s, still going. Like I said, it's been running for over 30 years, but yeah. So, point is, whether you're a 90s kid or a 2000s kid, you know, we're all adults now, living in the real world, dealing with all kinds of problems and stuff. So I thought I'd just take you back to a happier times, where we, you know, just cared about all that pop culture type of stuff. So until next time, everybody, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as always, hope you enjoy your day.